Namaskaram. Nama Sri Rama Krishnasya Shishyamagragamine Shivavadara Pudaya Vivekananda Yogine. Jai Ramakrishna. Namaskaram to all the Karyakartas who were instrumental in inviting me for this particular forum or for the seminar. And thanks for the warm welcome and the introduction given. So precisely for the next 45 minutes or so, I thought of working on the topic which was discussed, Swami Vivekananda, the Pitamaha of Bharat. Now there are a couple of things which I would like to add together with the specified topic. Swami Vivekananda used to say from yesteryears that there are two methods by which people can take his messages forward. People can take his teachings forward. One of the method is that you believe in whatever Swami Vivekananda say, or study Swami Vivekananda. He was born in 1863. He attained Samadhi in 1902. July 4th, you understanding that, you believing in that, believing in many things what he have said, which he was least interested actually. He was least interested about that. Second was like, practicing what is being taught by Swami Vivekananda, or what was taught by Swami Vivekananda. If you are able to practice that or in your life, if you are able to practice that in the nation, if you are able to practice that amongst the humanity, that is also considered to be appropriate. That is what he called as practical Vedanta. So today, the topic being Pitamaha of Bharat, Swami Vivekananda being Pitamaha of Bharat, is a bit more focused on the first thing, that is belief, and content discussion is basically the Bauthik. So that will be definitely covered. But as a direction which I as a Dikshit of Ramakrishna Bhatt, we used to get that it is not only that we need to believe, we have to propagate. We have to also propagate among the youth that which has to be practiced also. So very small portion of this content discussion or the seminar will be a discussion on couple of things which you have to practice also. So the main seminar will be there. In between, I'll be putting in things which you have to put into practice. Not you, we have to put into practice. So together we have to go. Then only Swamiji's belief in a system, putting and placing things into practice, both will work together. Please understand that there is a very big oxymoron which is happening in the market. You all might have read a lot of books on Swami Vivekananda. On Swami Vivekananda, very important, on Swami Vivekananda. You all might have listened a lot on Swami Vivekananda in the YouTube. You might have heard and listened about Swami Vivekananda from different sannyasis, monks. You might have learned and read a lot of contents on Swami Vivekananda from the Google or the social media sites. The greatest challenge what people like me who are actually doing research on Swamiji, or people like the masters, the monks of Ramakrishna Bhatt, the mission, and the people who are serious about Vivekananda, who are actually into Vivekananda, what the major challenge what we face is to differentiate between what is the actual and what is being propagated, and of course what is being cooked up. There are many things which are cooked up about Vivekananda. There are many things which are not real about Vivekananda, and there are many things which are actually right about Vivekananda. It's a tough exercise. So we all, including me, always have a mix of all this. So it's the right time that everybody of us stand up, move forward, and learn Vivekananda on its actual terms. It's a tough exercise. There is no methodology to follow. It's a rollerball sampling. You all are research students also, maybe. I can see a couple of doctorates and all here. Rollerball sampling method. As you win and go, you will understand more about the things and you build up the knowledge. So that methodology is only possible as of now. Now, Swami Vivekananda's Pitamaha. Once A Shishya asked Swami Vivekananda, Swamiji, how far you will be able to put all that is inside you onto the books so that I can read, the people in the future can read, or people who are yet to be born, or ages, how can actually we read you, we understand you. You will attain samadhi one day, but after reaching samadhi, we will miss you. So how can we understand you? How can we know more about you? So that period, Swamiji, or that point, maybe during that period at different places he used to mention, Swamiji said, don't worry. My words are not my words. My words are my master's words. Sri Ramakrishna's words. Sri Ramakrishna Paramahamsa, the master of Swami Vivekananda. So my words are his words, put in a different style, which is put in a structured manner, placed in a structured way for the modern times. His words never will be a fallacy for the next Sahasrabda, for the next 1,000 years. Another Sahasrabdam. His words never will be a fallacy. Means his words will never go waste. That will stand. Now, how this will get propagated, we least bothered. Even if there is not even a single thing written down in books, he may not have known about Google, I don't know, but if there is not even a single thing which is written down or noted in Google, it is always the energy and the vibrance present here in an ethereal platform, which charged people like all of us who are patiently listening to Swami Vivekananda. It is always available here. Sanatana Dharma says that what the knowledge, what you have to acquire is always here. It is available as packets. It is well connected with your soul. It is well connected with your Atman. Only thing you have to manifest it. You have to recollect it. Let us take up that surrealistic comment also while discussing about Swamiji's role as the Pitamaha. It is very unique a topic for all of us to discuss, but it is highly a researchable, highly an inquiry-oriented topic because Swamiji definitely was the Pitamaha of Bharat, especially was the passive, I repeat, especially was the passive trigger and ignition for the freedom struggle. So today we will quote few life instances, few examples where Swamiji was labeled and found out as the terminology what is going here. Let us start off from the autobiography. Let us start from the autobiography of our father of the nation, Mahatma Gandhi. Mahatma Gandhi in his autobiography, and Mahatma Gandhi in many other Mahatma Gandhi's biographies, it is mentioned that Mahatma Gandhi was very much enthusiastic about reading Swami Vivekananda. So that was a period before the primary congresses, where in which Mahatma Gandhi came in with the freedom struggle, like the 1920s, when he became very active in the freedom struggle, or when he became visible in the freedom struggle. He was there before. But as way before that, Swamiji attained Mahasamadhi in 1902, and it was in the year 1901, towards the end, and 1902, the earlier period, Mahatma Gandhi became very anxious to meet Swami Vivekananda. And what happened? The best method to meet the Swamiji now, because he heard that Swamiji was there in the Belur mud, Swamiji was taking rest in the Belur mud, so he actually took a train to Belur mud. He reached Belur mud, and in the Belur mud, he waited for Swami Vivekananda, but unfortunately that meeting did not happen. Swamiji had to quickly leave to Kolkata, the city. If you happen to visit Belur Mutt is not in the city. It is after Howrah. It is near to Dakshineshwar. City is a bit far. Now that it is well connected, you can think 125 years back, the connectivity won't be this easy. It will be very tough. Mahatma Gandhi came into the Belur Mutt and was unable to meet Swami Vivekananda. But in the Belur Mutt, there is a visiting dairy. There is a visitor's dairy where Swami Vivekananda used to keep for the visitors who come in and meet him, and to the visitors who actually can't meet him. Mahatma Gandhi wrote in that visitor's book. He wrote in a very different way, but the content, conclusion of that coinage is that his love for motherland raised thousandfold after knowing Swami Vivekananda, after reading Swami Vivekananda. So after reading the books of Swami Vivekananda, after reading the books of Swami Vivekananda on himself, and after reading books on Swami Vivekananda by others, and knowing Vivekananda from various sources, what has happened? It has happened that Mahatma Gandhi's love for his motherland multifolded. 20 years back in 1921, if I presume it is right, 20 years later, sorry, not 20 years back, 20 years later, in 1921, Mahatma Gandhi was there in Belur Mutt. And in the Belur Mutt, he actually quoted this. Years back when I came in, I left a message in the visitors' diary of Swami Vivekananda that my love for motherland raised thousandfold because of knowing him through various ways. Please understand, my dear friends, the role of Mahatma Gandhi in the freedom struggle of India is very trivial. Whatever X, Y, Z comments we put forward, there was seriously specific role for Swami Vivekananda, which was instigated through our beloved Mahatma. The non-violent struggles, satyagrahas, different methodologies used by Mahatma Gandhi with our intention for the freedom of our country had a spark from Swami Vivekananda. 20 years later, when he became very active in the freedom struggle in the 1920s, it was 21 years earlier to that, 21 years back, that he came to Swami Vivekananda, and through his unphysical touch, the spark in him actually burned. This was never quoted by any of us. It was never quoted by the ashram. It was clearly quoted by Mahatma Gandhi himself. Swami Vivekananda was very much instrumental. Swami Vivekananda was very much instrumental in triggering and igniting the nationalistic feeling, love for the motherland of Mahatma Gandhi. Let us look on to somebody else. Let us look on to another gentleman who was part of the freedom struggle. I'm not naming him firstly. He was planning to become a monk of this Ramakrishna order. He was planning to become a monk, a sannyasin, to keep up the principles of Sri Ramakrishna Paramahansa. So this young gentleman who wanted to place up the ideals of Ramakrishna, the ideals of Holy Mother Sarada Devi, the ideals of Swami Vivekananda, went to then President of Ramakrishna Mutt and requested that let him also join the monk, let him also join the monk order, let him also join the Mutt as a monk. Then President of Ramakrishna Mutt, if I recall correctly, Brahmananda Swamigal, that time conveyed, no, you are not destined to be this. You are not destined to be a monk. You have a higher task to be accomplished. You have very high task to be accomplished. for the country. So you are destined for that purpose. Don't join sannyasam. Don't join the monk principles. It is high time that you go back and fight for the country. Get educated, understand about the British, take the nationalistic idea, take your love of the motherland to the people and join the freedom struggle. That gentleman was none other than the fiery Subhash Chandra Bose. It is written in the history. He turned back and came back to the world. He came back to the materialistic world, and being in the materialistic world, he got ignited with his prophecies on national freedom struggle. He was inspired by Swami Vivekananda. He was ignited by Swami Vivekananda. He was ignited by Swami Vivekananda, which actually made him to throw away all that is and go forward to become a monk. But Brahmananda Swamigal, who was also called as Raja Maharaj, who's as beloved as Swami Vivekananda to Sri Ramakrishna, said, "My child, this is not your destiny. Go back. You have bigger roles to play." Where? In the India's freedom struggle. How can we deny that Subhash Chandra Bose is not ignited by Swami Vivekananda? Verily, somebody who was ready to throw away his whole life in the feet of such a rishi named Swami Vivekananda. From there, he took all the ignition, put all this energy onto this freedom struggle of the country. These two excellence, one who was following the methodology of non-violence, who was following the methodology of moderatism, another one who was charged by the arms, who went on to make the Indian National Army, who was more concentrated into a bit more of violent methods. I shouldn't say it like that, but still. Both had a spark from Swami Vivekananda. Now, these two are maybe the most famous, in fact. But I can say innumerable number of others. H.C. Ghosh. H.C. Ghosh, there was a very big organization in the Bangladesh part of the country, the East Bengal part of the country, which is now called as Bangladesh. If I recall, that was Dhaka Mukti Sangh, DMS, Dhaka Mukti Sangh. Dhaka Mukti Sangh was led by H.C. Ghosh. So H.C. Ghosh, in fact, what happened was H.C. Ghosh was somebody who was into the freedom struggle, who was into empowering the nation, who was into empowering the citizens of the country, especially in the East Bengal part region, especially on the eastern side, especially in the Bengal side. So he was actually enthusiastic, but was having a less of ignition. So one day he happened to meet Swami Vivekananda. And Swami Vivekananda, with this one prophecy to him, one instruction to him, to be specific, he said, "Do understand, India should be leader of the whole world. India should ignite the whole world. Bharat should be the leader of all of the globe. Bharat should be leading the whole of the nations in the universe. If Bharat need to instruct others, if others need to obey to Bharat, or if others need to listen to Bharat, the first and the foremost thing H.C. Ghosh, what Bharat should achieve is political independence. The first and the foremost thing which Bharat need to achieve is political independence. Because if we are colony to somebody, we are colonized by somebody. Let's say that period it was British. We were colonized by British, and the moment we are colonized by British, and we stand up and say to others about freedom, we stand up and say to others about spirituality. We stand up and say to others about all many other things which are the moral values of Mother India. People won't listen. Why? Because we are under somebody's control who never stood for Sanatana Dharma, who never stood for that universal Dharma. So become politically free. My dear friends, you can quote me or you can quote the dialogue between Swami Vivekananda and H.C. Ghosh. You can note it down. In 1897, Swami Vivekananda, I repeat, in 1897, 5 years before his Mahasamadhi, Swami Vivekananda conveyed to H.C. Ghosh that in another 50 years' time, the political independence may come. It was exactly after 50 years that India became independent. It is documented in the history. The dialogue between H.C. Ghosh of Dhaka Mukti Sangh, because I'm just repeatedly saying this, so you can also quote this. Quote this to others. Dhaka Mukti Sangh. Dialogue with Swami Vivekananda in 1897. He said India will become independent in another 50 years. India may get, not will. India may get independence in another 50 years. I'm sure political independence. Bharat will become politically free. Now, I just quoted Mahatma Gandhi, H.C. Ghosh, and rather Subhash Chandra Bose. One of the echelon of the India's independence, freedom struggle. An early echelon, Rabindranath Tagore. Rabindranath Tagore was very much from Bengal. You all know Chandni Ketan. You know about Gitanjali. You know all those wonderful reciters what he has given. Rabindranath Tagore was highly inspired by Swami Vivekananda. You can look onto n number of articles, n number of mentions, n number of content situations where you have mentioned Vivekananda is the condensed Bharat. Nivedita used to quote this very frequent. Margaret Noble, Nivedita, the Irish disciple of Swami Vivekananda, who was the Irish disciple, who is the Indian disciple. Still she lives in our mind as a Bharatiya. She used to quote that old excellence and say, Swami Vivekananda is the condensed Bharat. Bharat, the motherland condensed on something, we can call that as Swami Vivekananda. No. Should we restrict Vivekananda only to the freedom struggle? I can give you a couple of other examples. I'll come back to that. He should also be definitely connected with the social reform movements which happen in the country, which triggered the freedom struggle definitely. He traveled extensively. He started his quest for India from the southernmost tip of India, which is in Tamil Nadu now, Kanyakumari. There is the rock memorial which you all might have visited. There, sitting on the Mooladhara of the country. Kanyakumari is called as the Mooladhara of the country. I hope you all are aware about the chakra systems. Mooladharam, Swadhishtanam, Manipuragam, Anahadam, Vishuddhi, Ajna, Sahasra. And Buddhists say after Anahada and Visuddhi, after Anahada, before Visuddhi, you have a Hridaya chakra also, Buddhists used to say, but we say seven chakras. Mooladhara of Bharat is in Kanyakumari, Kumari Devi. The Kumari Devi Kovil of Kanyakumari is considered to be the Mooladhara of our country. Definitely Sahasra, Kailas. Sahasrara is in the Kailas. So, What does that mean? He came down, he traveled extensively in the country. There he inspired many. I want to quote three names from the south. One is Alasinga Perumal. Alasinga Perumal from Madras. Other one is Chattambi Swamigal from Kerala. Next one is Dr. Palpu from Kerala. Alasinga Perumal, who was very much instrumental in the creation of the magazine, which led to the creation of Vedanta Kesari. Vedanta Kesari is one of the most celebrated English mouthpiece of Swamiji's teachings. Vedanta Kesari. The magazine which actually led to the formation of Vedanta Kesari is Brahmavadi. Brahmavadi was created by Alasinga Perumal. Alasinga Perumal was from Chennai, the current New Chennai. He was from Tamil Nadu. Why Alasinga Perumal is this celebrated? I brought in Alasinga Perumal to this. Because through Brahmavadi, through Vedanta Kesari, millions of people were inspired or are still inspired. Vedanta Kesari was the mouthpiece of the Vivekananda teachings, which was read by most of the freedom fighters of that country. It's close to 100 years old now. That is close to 100 years old. The magazine, just over 100 years. Vedanta Kesari, Prabuddha Bharata, and Prabuddha Kerala. Alasinga Perumal was somebody who was instrumental in which the creation of that. He was a Vedic scholar who was a close friend of Swamiji. When Swami Vivekananda reached Chennai, when Swami Vivekananda reached Tamil Nadu, and when he wanted to go to the 1893 World Parliament of Religion, he doesn't have money with him. It was Alasinga Perumal from Tamil Nadu who collected the money, gave it to Swami Vivekananda, and he set on the ship to go to Chicago for that great speech in which he said, "Brothers, sisters, and brothers of America." How many know this? How many of you know this? How many in the whole world know this? The role of Alasinga Perumal. It was from Tamil Nadu he collected the funds for that. And even when reaching America, when he had shortage of funds, he wrote a letter to Alasinga Perumal, who then times sent ₹1,000. Then times spent ₹1,000, which he collected from a merchant, and he sold his wife's ornaments to send this money to Swami Vivekananda. How many of us celebrate? How many of us celebrate? I can see many people from Tamil Nadu, in this particular group. How many of you know about this? We should be proud of this. It was Alasinga Perumal who was instrumental in sending Swami Vivekananda to Chicago. It was Alasinga Perumal who managed to make Swamiji's initial expense there, even by selling his wife's ornaments. And he collected debt from a merchant and sent to Swami. Unfortunately, he also left his physical body at the age of 44 at a later point of time. Now, Alasinga Perumal became very instrumental in this idea generation, not only with the common people, but with the freedom fighters through Vedanta Kesari, which happened at a later point of time. That period, when he was on the travels, he also met Chattambi Swamigal, who was instrumental in creation of the Tirthapada ashrams, which generated a lot number of saints, which generated a lot number of nationalists in the country. There was a close interaction between Swami Vivekananda and Dr. Palpu, wherein which Swami Vivekananda clearly informed Dr. Palpu that there is a need for the people of Kerala to unite beneath a sannyasin, a perfect sannyasin, a perfect renunciate, so that there will be a collective sangam formed there. There will be a collective force formed there against the oppression faced by underprivileged. Dr. Palpu came back, met His Holiness Sri Narayana Gurudevan, started Sri Narayana Dharma Parivalana Yoga. SNDP, which is a large force in the Kerala society. That is why, in reverence to that, the mouthpiece of SNDP at that Srinarayana Dharma Paripalanam at that point of time was in the name of Vivekananda, Vivekodayam, was in the name of Swami Vivekananda. Now, what does these social movements, how does these social movements help the freedom? These social movements actually brought in energy to the people. This brought in energy to the citizens of the country. This leveled the discriminations which were in the society. This helped in the temple entry. This Vedanta Kesari articles inspired large number of freedom fighters not to sit back at home, to come onto the stage, go onto the field, to be on the roads, yelling for freedom. Now, who was instrumental for this? None other than beloved, most revered Vivekananda Swamigal, Swami Vivekananda. I hope you all might have heard about Ganesh Olsavams. You all might be listening to the terminology Ganesh Olsavam. Now you might be seeing a lot of notices. Malayalam, if they say Ganesh Olsavam, Ganesh also in North and Tamil Nadu, you can see. Ganesh also was propagated and most promoted by the revolutionary freedom fighter of the country, Bal Gangadhar Tilak. He himself has written a commentary on Bhagavad Gita, Bal Gangadhar Tilak. Once Bal Gangadhar Tilak was asked, from where did you get the inspiration to start such wonderful moment in which people came out? People came out from houses, barring the caste discriminations existed at that point of time. The Shudra, the Vaishya, Brahmana, the Kshatriya, nothing like that. Indian, Bharatiya. Ganesh also was very much instrumental for that. Balagangadhar Tilakan replied, I was inspired by the Swami of Belur Mutt, the disciple of Sri Ramakrishna, Swami Vivekananda. He inspired me to come out with those programs by which we all are unified by Sanatana Dharma. We all are unified by the universal principles. There was none other than Balagangadhar Tilak, and it was none other than Swami Vivekananda who was instrumental for this. 1950, another great saint left this earthly about in 1950. I hope you all know about Sri Aurobindo, Aurobindo Maharshi Aurobindo, or his former name was Aurobindo Ghosh, who was there in the Alipur jail as part of the freedom struggle even before becoming a monastic. Aurobindo used to say, I was highly inspired by the Vajanamridam. I was highly inspired by the Sri Ramakrishna Vajanamridam. It is called as the Kadamridam in Bengali. So I was very much inspired by the Vajanamridam. Then I also used to read a lot of literature on Swami Vivekananda and Sri Aurobindo. Aurobindo Maharshi, in his reminiscence, says that in the Alipur jail, when he was reflecting on the thoughts and teachings and preachings of Swami Vivekananda, veritably Swami Vivekananda came in flesh in front of him from a mystic realm and preached the ideas by which he became Maharshi Aurobindo. Aurobindo Maharshi said, veritably Swami Vivekananda came in his flesh and blood in the mystical dimension and preached him the theories, thoughts, what he practiced all through his life. Now, Auroville, you all might be knowing about Auroville in Tamil Nadu, Pondicherry area. All those was built by Maharshi Aurobindo, and Maharshi Aurobindo was built by Swami Vivekananda. Swami Vivekananda was instrumental for this. I quote what I said earlier. The dialogues between Swami Vivekananda rather the relationship between Swami Vivekananda and Alasinga Perumal. When Alasinga Perumal gave the financial support for Swami Vivekananda, Alasinga Perumal itself said, you have to take part in the World Parliament of Religion. And Swami Vivekananda set forth to Chicago from India, from Bharat. You know the story in which he says, Sisters and Brothers of America, and preached that wonderful phenomenon to the whole world that through different rivers, as through different rivers, the water reached the same ocean, so our different faiths reach thee. You have different faiths in the whole world. You have Christianity, you have Islam, you have Buddhism, you have Sendavasta, you have Hasidism, you have Zoroastrianism, you have Judaism, you have Sanatana Dharma. Yeah, everything is there. You have Hinduism, whatever it is. You have different tribalisms. But as and when it goes to the different rivers and reach the same ocean, all these reach the same divinity, the same godliness. He didn't say God, he said godliness, Daivigata. Daivigata in Sanskrit. So, what did he say? He says, as through the different routes, you reach the same ocean. That was in the Chicago. That was in the World Parliament of Religion in Chicago. So in that ship, when he was going, another immemorable chat happened with a wonderful businessman who later became an established industrialist. We should not say businessman, an industrialist. That time, Swami Vivekananda was also called as Swami Vireshwarananda. He was also called as Swami Vireshwarananda. Even before that, he was called as Narendra. Now also we call him Narendra. Sri Ramakrishna used to call him Naren. In Bengali, Naren. Swami Vireshwarananda was met by another industrialist who got inspired from Swami Vireshwarananda and said, Swami Vireshwarananda inspired me to build the manufacturing hubs. Inspired me to build the manufacturing country, him to build the manufacturing hubs and manufacturing utilities of the country. Swami Vireshwarananda inspired him to start science and technology research organizations. It was in his blueprint, this industrialist blueprint, that he clearly wrote down that there is a need for creation of science and technology institution. There is a need for creation of research-oriented organization on social science. There is a need for organization which do research on basic fundamental principles of science and technology. What more, the Indian Institute of Science, later in the Tata Institute of Fundamental Research, later point of time at Tata Institute of Social Sciences, all got inspired from the same Tata group. It was none other than the founder Tata of the Tata group, Mr. Tata, who actually met Swami Vireshwarananda. Later the news came to the news came to Tata that one Swami from India is making vibrations in the globe through the World Parliament of Religion. So Tata asked, oh, Swami Vireshwarananda. No, he got the response, no, not Swami Vireshwarananda. He was then there in America. It was some other Swami named Swami Vivekananda. Tata came back. It was years later he understood. He was very strongly believing. He reflected, I knew Swami Vireshwarananda itself is Swami Vivekananda. Nobody can create vibrations in a society which was lacking spirituality. Nobody other than Swami Vireshwarananda is not Swami Vireshwarananda. He is that monk who discriminates, who is in ever-loving bliss through discrimination, Swami Vivekananda. My dear Karyakartas, what we see now, an exemplary example for industrialization in the country, led by a wonderful group, Tata Group. All the innovations for the common people. The Tata Group, which stands on its own even before the freedom of the country, and still holding on to the country, India, as a beloved group, was inspired by Swami Vivekananda. Many groups came, Many groups went, many industries came, even more rich industrial people came to the country, are still in the country. But Tata is Tata. But Tata stands for Tata, Tata stands for India, and Tata is Tata. Inspired by Swami Vivekananda. My dear Karyakartas, as I said earlier, now we are going on a system mode wherein which we believe in Swamiji as the Pitamaha of Bharat. I think we should also plug in some of his teachings, very important teachings, which he conveyed through his teachings, which he conveyed through his dialogues at that point of time, which was very much instrumental for people like Mahatma Gandhi, Subhash Chandra Bose, H.C. Ghosh, Aurobindo, Bal Gangadhar Tilak, and all other revolutionaries who came at later point of time, even including Chandrasekhar Azad. In that, there are three principles he has clearly conveyed to them. What more we should know about that? He said, that which is staunchly rooted in truth, which is pure, and that which is perfectly unselfish, dealt with astonishing courage and strength, will never miss the target. If you are standing with the truth, if you are standing with the dharma, and if you are perfectly unselfish, standing up for others, standing up for the society, standing up for the nation, standing up for the mankind, with courage, with that emphatic strength what you have, you will never miss the target. Had it not been this particular dialogue, this slogan which came out from this mouth, from this Nara Rishi's mouth, was it not that many of them who got inspired in the country will have felt the blood? Why the freedom struggle? What more the freedom struggle? Even all the social movements of the country, there and there in which Swami Vivekananda was involved passively. Once Swami Vivekananda was asked by a freedom fighter who actually became a freedom fighter, not becoming a monk, just like our Subhash Chandra Bose. He asked, Swamiji, why can't you get into freedom struggle? I'm very sure if you get into freedom struggle, India will become very, very fast. You can make India politically independent. You can make India socially independent. I'm very sure that future at some point of time, India will also reach economic independence. Why can't you do that? There are no exact words by Swami Vivekananda, but later on in a dialogue which is explained by somebody else. I can't quote him. I forgot his name. It is said that Swami Vivekananda replied, if India become politically independent, socially independent, and economically independent without its empirical structure of spirituality, that is dangerous. So India should become politically independent, socially independent, and economically independent with a strong empirical structure on spirituality. And my responsibility is to create that empirical structure of spirituality. And my responsibility is to make that empirical structure of spirituality on which all the political independence, all the other structures can be built. Think how wise he was. This is all about Swami Vivekananda, precisely written down on his role as a Pitamaha. But we never stop there. Swami Vivekananda was the crux of the ignition which sparked the independence. The Purna Swaraj which was demanded in the 20s by the revolutionary was inspired by Swami Vivekananda 2 decades before that. As I call 97, on his dialogue with H.C. Ghosh, in the Dhaka Mukti Sangh, he said, in another 5 decades, Another 50 years, India become independent. He was such a kind of a visionary who could foresee the future. Now the question is, he considered as the Pitamaha of our Bharat. Later, Mahatma Gandhi as the father of the nation. And with the current scenarios around us, how many of us are following his ideals and principles? How many are perfect unselfishness, where we stand for others, not for us? How many of us are following his ideals of and courage to face the hurdles? How many of us follow his ideal of Uddishtada Jatada Praviran Nibhodada, arise, awake, always vigilant till the goal is reached? How many of us has taken up one idea, one purpose, one aim, one ambition, and is working on with your mind, soul, and physicality towards the success of that? Physically strong, with iron muscles and nerves of steel, with right food, exercise, and diligence, being diligent, how many of us are preparing towards his ideal of becoming a nation's youth? How many of you are always enthusiastic, throwing away our anxieties and depressions? Become a dynamic professional. I used to say, I need young blood who is very strong in their pranamaya kosam, in their energy. Otherwise, he used to say, how many of you take up his ideals of free will, his ideals of willpower, and his ideals men on you, on your shoulders? How many of you? How many of us? Not you. How many of us? To take up all the responsibilities on your shoulders for your country. How many of us do that? And how many of us celebrate the learning process, the Vijnanamaya Kosham? How many of us are ready to understand about a life? How many of us are ready to understand the principles of life, not only to gather the job, not only to garner the money, but not only to gather the fame and the power and the fame and the name? How many of us are ready to celebrate the process of acquiring knowledge, as he used to say? And how many of us are ready to know about ourselves, to understand it spiritually with the science of quest about the soul, and to become perfectly free, to become an ideal Bharatiya? We all may accept Swamiji as the Pitamaha. He is least bothered. You accept, if you would have been here now, I'm least bothered whether you accept me as a Pitamaha or the father of the nation or XYZ. Don't even know my name, no issues. But can we be actually following these ideals and working for the nation? Unselfish for the nation. Many of you are. Many of you are striving towards that. It's a platform where you are striving towards. Great. Is it time to for all of us to actually ignite that passion in others also? Yes, it is. Swamiji used to say, there are many births as per Sanatana Dharma. You have incarnations, you have previous births, you have future births coming. It may come, it may go. It happens then and there. It happens continuously. So he used to say, at least this birth, this one birth, can you leave that birth for my motherland? This Janmam, can you leave for Bharatam? Can you take up the ideals of Sri Ramakrishna and serve the people of your motherland as Lord Shiva? No need to chant Shiva Shiva. No need to chant Shivavadarams. Can you become perfectly unselfish and go out and serve your country? So this is what he used to say. Swamiji, on his narration with Mahatma Gandhi used to say, there is a great ideal which I learned from Swami Vivekananda. There is a great ideal which he used to understand from Swamiji. That was the ideal of servant leadership. Swami Vivekananda used to say, the moment you go out to serve your friends, if you're able to do that, one day you automatically become a leader. And that leader is called a servant leader. Mahatma Gandhi, who was one of the key instruments for the freedom of our country, was highly inspired. And you happen to have learned about his life episodes where he cleaned, he cleaned the public toilets. He doing service to others. He perfectly stand unselfish on various fronts where he used to serve others. It was inspired from the servant leadership ideal of Swamiji. He who lead can lead only if he serve. That was his proclamation to the national movement. My dear Karyakartas, we have to understand that. We have to understand that Swami Vivekananda, the spark which ignited, the emphatic spark which ignited Swami Vivekananda, that great echelon who triggered Mahatma Gandhi, Bal Gangadhar Tilak, Subhash Chandra Ghosh, H.C. Ghosh, Rabindranath Tagore, Chandrasekhar Azad, and all those. Maharshi Aurobindo, Alasinga Perumal, Sri Chattambi Swamigal, Dr. Palpu, and all those unknown names also. Raja of Khetri, Tata, and Sister Nivedita, and all those unknown names. Do we need more examples? Do we need more instances? Do we need more readings to state he was the undoubtedly the Pitamaha of Bharat? Do we need any more proclamation on this? It is all of us Karyakartas who have to come forward, learn more about Swami Vivekananda, and to proclaim to the whole world, spread the message that Pitamaha. He was the igniting factor for the freedom struggle. He is the Pitamaha of Bharat. If all those big names which was present here, they would have straight away come and conveyed. Why you need a discussion? Are you all that ignorant to deny this factor that he is the Pitamaha? But now we are in a social circumstance where we have to state and prove things. Otherwise, that might be constructed as a political gimmick. My dear friends, undoubtedly, Swami Vivekananda is the Pitamaha of Bharat. I think I have exactly covered 45 minutes of my dialogue. And Sujit, I think this is time for me to stop. If there is time, we can go for a discussion.